you are taking part in the parade this Saturday on June the 4th, and it starts at 5 p.m. So the Anthracite Heritage Museum and the Anthracite Heritage Parade Committee, we're all working real hard at it. If you care to contribute to the Anthracite Parade Committee, just send your check to Shamokin City Hall. We'll be happy to take care of it for you. And of course, right now I have another young fellow, Mooch Kashner, who's a federal mine inspector, a state mine inspector. Excuse me, Mooch, you're a state mine inspector. And I know you're still very active around these parts, and you're very active in mining. But I want to ask you one question. Why were you wearing the baseball hat?
To keep the hair out of my eyes.
You have the same problem I have with hair. Is that it? Well, we both have the same problem. Now, Mooch, of course, I know you have a presentation to make on this Coal-A-Thon, but first of all, I'd like to ask you some questions. How did you start acquiring all these tools that you have in that room of yours? I
kept saving them. As I got them, I saved them, put them away, even moved them with me when I moved.
Well, how many times have you, I know, and from what I gather, talking to you, otherwise, you still have as many tools around the house yet as you have up at the room.
I believe I have.
You have?
I believe I have.
Now, I talked to Bob about that just a minute ago, and he mentioned that you had a saw that was over 150 years old.
Yeah, it was used back in the 1700s. And up
in the 1700s?
And up until the early 1800s. And then they discontinued using it. It was used before there was sawmills used.
No kidding.
That's right. They used to saw the boards, the logs long ways.
And that was one, was that a crosscut? Or?
That was a crosscut saw. They called it a pit saw, and they put the logs on stilts, or else they had a pit where one man stood down the pit and one man stood on the log. And they,
oh boy.
And they sawed boards, and that's where they made homes.
You better be on the wrong
end
of that
At that time,
log.
they made homes out of white boards,
Yeah,
even
right.
the walls inside were
exactly right.
made. Yeah. I have a home on a farm that I bought that still has the board walls.
No kidding.
In the home, sure.
Do you have it painted or not?
No. That's not being used. It's not being used.
That's being used now. Well, I know, Mooch. I know you have a lot of equipment in there. You have an awful lot of stuff in there. But I do know this much, that your interest is in anthracite, and your interest is with that museum. But furthermore, you get around this area and you see an awful lot of activity in anthracite. I'd like to ask you a question. And I had Don Rosini here just earlier this evening, and he spoke about anthracite. What's your feeling of anthracite right now? Is it coming back? Do you think it's going to be coming back?
I think it's going to come back, but it's not the way people might think. I don't think it's going to come back in
deep mining.
In proportions people think it's going to come back. I don't believe it. Especially underground mining, deep mining. Maybe in deeper strip pits, like Don explained, where you take the ground off and lifts and so on.
Right.
That way, I think that'll happen.
Mm-hmm.
That they'll go back and strip areas that was previously stripped and so on. Yeah.
I know you get around, and I guess you still know there's a lot of coal in this area.
There's more coal underground here than they took out.
I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah, they are.
I know, and I was remiss in mentioning this, that one of the points of the museum, and I think you might point this out, that we have at the museum a map of Shamokin. I don't know if Bob has made a map of Coal Township or not as yet.
Yeah, it's Shamokin, Coal Township combined.
You yourself can go in and find out exactly what vein of coal you're living under.
Yeah, whether it's mined or not.
Is under you, I should say. You're living
under your home, yeah.
Under your home.
Whether it was even mined or not, too.
It will tell you that.
That shows whether it was mined or not.
It'll show you whether it's mined or not.
Schomper made that map, yeah.
Well, now, I know Tim Evans here has taken some slides, and Clarence Mooch Kashner, of course, state mine inspector. If you watch that monitor, Mooch, you don't mind me calling you Mooch, do you?
No, I don't. Because somebody calls me Clarence, I don't know who they're talking to.
You don't talk about it. Well, do you need the baseball hat? That's what I wanted to know.
No.
You're all right without the baseball hat?
I got it shaved tonight. Shaved all the hair off.
You're like I am. And he has some slides here that's going to show you some area mining scenes, and I wish you to describe them, Clarence, while we're at them. Now, here's one here.
That breaker there is located down at the dark corners. It's a Swift Coal Company and incorporation. It employs about 7 men plus, truck drivers and so on. It's not included in a breaker employees.
When you're saying dark corners, is that down
That's near Paxinus.
That S-curve, right?
Yeah, right at that S-curve at Paxinus.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that's another picture of the same breaker, except it's higher.
Now, let me ask you this. They were independent breakers, weren't they?
That's an independent breaker. That's been going back when the independent miner, bootlegging, whatever you want to call it, started. That breaker's been there. Several owners had it already, and Swift has that for a good many years now. And that's another picture of the front portion of the same breaker.
How much coal do they usually process out of there, Mooch, in a day or what?
Well,
how can they handle it?
they can run well, from whatever they get in a day. They can run it. I mean, if they want to put 700 tons through there, they probably could put it through in a day.
And this was all an individual operation, from an independent standpoint, that these fellas, just put these up by themselves and
That's right. They built the breakers and operated them. That's right. Prepared the coal.
Picture the same breaker?
That's the Swift breaker. Yeah. There's the Diminick breaker. That breaker there hasn't worked now for some time, and
that's down in the same area, isn't it?
Yeah. Of course, the fellow who operated that is deceased now, Andy Diminick, and that's located near the Swift breaker, near Paxinas, along Route 61. It's right along the route of 61, in fact.
Now, with those independent mines, Mooch, I mean, as a state mine inspector, they had to conform to state mine rules and regulations as the regular mines did as well.
Yes, they had to conform to safety regulations. Yes, they did. This is a picture of a ramp where they loaded railroad cars right in back of the Diminick breaker. And where that ramp is now, there was a railroad there, but the track is now torn out. And the picture to your right there is another picture of a ramp that's just about ready to fall over.
That looks like a bunch of scaffolding there.
Yeah, well, that was a hopper where they loaded railroad cars off of that branch. And now that hopper to your right there is about ready to fall over, and this hopper here is just everything's tore off it except the skeleton is standing there. Then after they was finished using those ramps, they built this crib in here, and they pulled the railroad. This here was right against the track, in fact, and the railroad cars was pulled in right close to that cribbing, and then they dumped it right directly from the truck right into the railroad car instead of loading it out of a chute or a ramp.
They'd load it at the breaker and haul it up there and just dump it in.
Dump it right in out of the truck, right into the railroad cars off that ramp. Of course, the track isn't there now. You see, the track is torn out.
It's taken out of there.
Yeah. And that's the blended coal sales. That breaker was last operated by Greco. And that's abandoned now. That's located between Paxinas and Wayscales along 61.
That was Breaker Row for a while then, I guess.
Yeah, it was. There were a lot of breakers down through there one time.
Now, this one I can't recognize.
Well, that's a breaker that's being torn down. It's the old Sage breaker. That's been abandoned for quite some time, a good many years now, and it's being dismantled right now.
Is that the one alongside the IVB plant?
It's right alongside of the blended coal sales. It's between Paxinas and
Wayscales.
And Wayscales, yeah. It's right near that meat processing plant there, Clark's.
I see. That's right. I guess that was damaged during Agnes, I believe.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of dirt and debris washed in around that area. Yeah.
Now, this one here.
That's the part of the R&N breaker at Wayscales. It was formerly D&Z breaker. Well, this was owned by Stanley Diminick and Teddy Zubzik.
Yeah.
At one time, and now Elwood Swank owns it. And this is the fine coal portion of the plant. Now they run our 4 and 5 out and 6 out these ramps here, out these conveyors, and dump it right on the ground. And that takes the rock. The one place is the rock that's taken from the coal and dumped on the one pile, and then the coal.
Now let me ask you this question. We had the Glen Burn down here, of course, the old Cameron Colliery, the Glen Burn Colliery, and we've developed, that huge refuse bank. Where did the independent breaker put his refuse?
Well, they had refuse banks. They have them down around Shamrock. For years and years, all those breakers at Wayscales was dumping down around Shamrock.
They had a central location for themselves.
Yeah, they had a place that they rented and dumped on private property.
I see.
And there's refuse banks are still there.
Well, that's what I mean, but they didn't do it individually. They did it as a group then, is that right?
That's right. They all dumped probably all dumped in the same place, you
All
know,
dumped in the
same
place.
banks, yeah.
I see. Well, here we have the old coal hole.
Now this is a coal hole now. This is all they're allowed to put up now. See, years ago they were allowed to build a hopper, a wooden hopper, right over the slope, but now they're not allowed to do that. They're allowed to put up wooden uprights to support the shiv and to dump the slope car. And they must dump it on the ground and pick it up with a loader, or else dump it right in a truck, which is being done there. That mine area is run by the Shingara boys. It's the FED Coal Company, which stands for Fred, Ed, and Dan Shingara.
Thought maybe it was the federal coal company there for a minute, Clarence. No, I'll tell you, on that shot now, they still winch it up, don't they?
This is run by a gasoline winch, and that's a gunboat which slides on wooden track.
I see. How many men do they usually
Well, there's 4 men there.
4 men operate that.
Yeah.
And they're producing coal.
Oh yeah. Now this is the fan installation at the same mine, at the FED Coal Company. And that mine, by the way, is located right on top of the mountain above the schoolhouse in Treverton. In other words, if you looked up from the schoolhouse, you can see that one of those mines up in there. And that's another picture of the same operation, the FED Coal Company.
Well, that sure doesn't do that trucker much good if he has to wait there to get that load.
Well, they usually own their own truck. And then when they have a load, the hoisting engineer takes the load, and the miners does their drilling or timbering or whatever has to be done, see.
What is that, their operating room?
This is the FED Coal Company. They have a little shaker there, and they prepare some coal there that they hoist, and they take out the fines and make rice coal for domestic, sell it to homeowners for domestic heat.
Today, Mooch, they're not doing anything with the large sizes of coal, are they? With egg coal or, nut coal?
Oh, yes.
Stove coal?
Oh, yes.
Do they still have a market for that?
They have a market for that. Oh, yeah, for nut coal and stove coal. Oh, sure. There's a big market for it. And they haul it mostly to cities.
Yeah.
This here picture here is...
now, this looks like a hopper all there.
This is the hopper that you can actually see from down at the schoolhouse in Treverton.
I see.
This hopper here. Belongs to the Shingara boys again. It's brothers of the other lads that I just mentioned, and this is called the T&L Coal Company. I don't know where to get the T&L. Probably it was run by a T&L Coal Company before these fellas took it, and they kept the name. That's it.
Yeah, that looks like a long conveyor.
Well, that there is the washery, the Stevens washery at the lower end of Treverton. And that's the abandoned...
Well, that's the one you see off of Route, what is it, 125?
Route 225. 225. That's off of Route 225, and that's the abandoned old Stevens washery there.
That's not operating now, is it?
Oh, it hasn't operated in years. See, they built a new plant east of that. That's the same picture of the same plant.
They processed a lot of coal in their day at that
Oh, yeah, and they have big refuse banks from that washery.
Now, what were those projections out now?
This is the new plant that they built east of that old plant.
Yeah.
The Reading Anthracite Company owns this plant here, and those projections from the plant is where they stock their coal.
Different
size coal.
Different size coal, I see.
And that's located too west of Treverton.
Now, here's refuse coming out. What is that?
This is the silt pond from this new breaker that we just looked at. And this is where they pump the water, the waste, silt, and water from that new plant up into this pond here. And then that's a settlement called the settling pond where all the silt goes. And by the way, that thing was built up several times now. That's pretty deep. That silt in there is pretty deep, probably 35 to 40 feet deep in there.
Do you get any runoff of it, or can they recycle that water at any time, Mooch, or not? Or does it just have to sit there as a pond?
Well, at some places they recycle it, but you can't do it out of one pond like there is here. See, they only have one pond. Now they have 3 or 4 or 5 ponds where they can run the water off the top to a pond that settles more slush off of that and silt, and then to another pond where till it gets to the last pond the water is cleared pretty good and they can reuse it.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and they do reuse it. Some plants,
recycle it, right?
Yeah, they do reuse the water.
That looks like a 12-inch pipe there.
That's about a 10-inch pipe. That's a picture of that old washery, the old Stevens washery again now from a different view, a different side.
I guess this could be called a classic picture of anthracite mining areas, you know, with that type of a colliery setup, I mean, or a breaker setup.
Yeah. Well, see, these new breakers or plants they're building now, they don't, they load that coal from that new plant there right with the front end loader right into the railroad cars. Where this plant here, they had the railroad cars drive right under the plant and loaded it from hoppers. And the new plant doesn't need the equipment that the old plant had to have. See, it runs more simpler. And they have better cleaning devices.
Well, now here's another one.
Well, this here mine is located on the top of the West Cameron Mountain, and it's run by the Collier boys from over in West Cameron. And that's in the 3-vein.
Boy, that's an unusual.
That's one that's upset. Probably was pulled over. This is the same mine as Collier mine. And that's that mine there is located now on the Treverton side of the mountain, and this is the Snyder Coal Company. This one here.
I see. Now let me ask you this: most of the mining, anthracite-wise, right now, Mooch, is done by the independents, isn't it?
Yeah, all the deep mining is done by independents. No big companies doing doing any deep mining at all.
You know, what about that one down there at was that Coker mine where they had that tragedy?
It's still an independent mine.
Was that an independent mine yet?
That's an independent
mine.
Is
that listed as an independent mine?
Oh yeah, yeah. They're not. That's not union.
And most of your, well, I guess most of your legitimate, these are legitimate mines, but I'm saying most of your coal companies per se don't operate deep mining anymore. No, this is the only deep mining that's done that.
That's all. You know, all the big companies are strip mining. They're not doing any deep mining at all.
How much jurisdiction do you have over strip mining? Do you have much? None at all?
None. I don't inspect
You don't inspect anything with strip mining?
I only inspect deep mines, breakers, banks.
And that's it?
That's it. And everything else that comes up.
Now, here's one that looks familiar to me.
Yeah.
Now, which breaker is this now?
I'm trying to identify it myself. It looks like the...
They have us stuck.
No, they don't. It looks like the Radshaw washery to me, up at the Radshaw.
That's the Radshaw.
That's what it is. I think it is that too. It is that.
It is that?
Yeah, it is that. That's the
Good
Radshaw
for you.
washery.
I didn't recognize it. What are they doing? Giving us a puzzle?
I should know what it is. I inspect them, and it's in my district.
They must be throwing some jigsaw puzzles at us now. Yeah. They're giving us some good ones to pick at.
Yeah, what the... And that's another picture of the Radshaw washery.
Same thing. Okay, yeah. Now we're in the groove again.
Yeah.
Timmy over there.
It had me stunned for a little bit. Right. The way
what's this?
This area here is located out in Little Mockinoy Township, and this is where that big project from these people in New York are starting on the Sunshine Coal Company property. And this here road is cut now. This is a new road. It's cut up way up into the mountains, and to the right of this road here, they have a strip mine going now. They're stripping coal there now. And right in there, in that area right close to the front here, there's going to be a new modern breaker built.
Right in there?
Yep, and they're going to clean coal by a pumping process. That's going to be something new in this area that we don't have now. And they have the equipment there to do it already. And this is a picture of the Ranshaw washery again here. And that's another part of it.
The Ranshaw washery, huh? And we're still looking at the same one, right?
Yeah, he took a lot of pictures. Now this here...
There's a power shovel.
This here is a power shovel of the Reading Anthracite Company of strip mining southeast of Treverton. That's in the ravine we're out through Edgewood Park, you know. When you go out to Edgewood Park, you can continue out that road and you would come upon that shovel.
How much on that shovel now with that bucket, what does that bucket usually pick up, Mooch, normally? That size there now that we're looking at. I know they come all sizes.
Yeah, I think that's about a 8 to 10 yard shovel.
8 to 10 yards of earth in a crack.
In a crack, yeah.
And you have no regulation at all with strip mining?
No, I don't inspect no strip mines. That's a
There's
picture
a
of the
picture of
same.
the shovel just gouging it out.
That's a
right?
front picture of the shovel. Yeah.
That's
And
an
that's another
expensive piece
picture.
of equipment, isn't it?
Oh yeah, they cost millions. Yeah. That's a drill now. It's a drill rig where they drill the rock and blast it so they can dig it with those shovels.
That looks like an oil well rigging machine.
They also drill that to test for the thickness of the seam, you know, before they blast it. If the seam isn't thick enough, you know, sometimes they skip areas.
I see.
That coal hole there looks like the Snyder mine on top of the Trevorton Mountain, and that's what it is too.
Well, you know, I think our viewers today are going to be impressed, Mooch.
It looks like a side picture of the Collier mine. They're mixed up a little bit. Yeah.
You know that everybody thinks that anthracite is not being mined in the area, but anthracite is being mined in the area.
Yeah, there's mines starting all the time. You know, I have 3 right now that I'm, you know, working on to get plans for 3 new mines starting. In fact, in 1972, I was down to 11 mines, and now I'm up to 30. So
there you go. Now, in other words, that's a healthy sign for the industry.
I had more than that, and they had to take some off of me. I had too many. In August of '76, they redistricted and took some of them away from me.
And what place is this?
This is the R&N breaker down at. This is the east section of the R&N, the former D&Z breaker.
D&Z breaker.
Yeah. And that's the same breaker, the D&Z. That was the D&Z breaker. It's now the R&N breaker owned by Elwood Swank.
That's quite an investment that's made with these breakers, isn't it?
Oh my, yeah. Today, you try to build a breaker like that, it costs an awful lot. An awful lot of money. There's a picture of that road again.
Same route.
That's down Little Mountain Township, that road.
Now, this is an unusual type of equipment. What is that bin? Is that underneath there that drops in
That's a bin, and that was taken at the R&M Coal Company on top of the Trevorton Mountain, above the schoolhouse again.
I see.
That's run by a fella from down near Dornside, a fella by the name of Ray Buck. And a fella from Shamokin runs that, a Yoder. And I think that's another view of the
How
R&M
often, Mooch, do you have to inspect these operations? Once a week?
Every 2 months?
months?
Every 2 months. And as often as you deem necessary.
As you deem necessary, but
just depending on the corrections that has to be made and so on. If I feel it as though I should go back there in a week to see that something got done, I go back in a week. Yeah, sure.
Now this looks like a pretty fair operation, right?
Yeah.
Looking at that outside tipple, it looks like they do a pretty good job.
Yeah, they do. They fix them up and make them safe, and they work good mines today.
Well, they have
mines.
to be. If you're around to see them, they have to stay that way.
The mines isn't really dangerous. It's the guy who works the mine that makes the danger.
That's true.
Usually, most accidents is caused by human failure. Not to do. They obey safety rules or safety regulations, and this is why accidents happen. Ordinarily, it's just as safe to be in that mine as it is for you and I to be sitting there.
There you are.
That's how I feel about the mines. It's just that
It's like
accidents is
anything
caused
else.
by human failure, most of them.
Human failure is the problem.
Of course, the industry has hazards. There's no question. Some hidden hazards.
Right.
You know that.
Now, where's this
happen.
at, Mooch? Where's this at now, what we're looking at? Is that part of that
That's an abandoned mine out in West Cameron Township, and it was run by the MG&S Coal Company, but now the mine is abandoned. A few years ago, we had a couple of men hurt there pretty seriously, and since that, the mine hasn't operated.
Let me ask you this. We do have a lot of abandoned mines in the area. How much do we do to close them up, or do we leave them open, or what do we do with them?
We get them closed. There's a law that,
They have to be closed up, huh?
Yeah, that the owner of the mine has to seal it up, and there's specifications on how it should be sealed and so forth.
I see.
Slopes today has to be sealed, put a seal in it and then filled with 25 feet of clay, and shafts has to be filled for their entire depth. That's the law.
I see. In other words, but that's part of your job too, to go around and check all this, seal them all off, huh?
See that that's done, yeah.
And that's part of the operation. Well, Clarence Mooch Kashner, I certainly want to thank you for stopping by today and tonight and taking time out from your busy schedule and coming in. Just hang on to that a minute. Now, we don't want to leave anybody here without a drink. You know, that's one of the
do I get a
miners'
drink?
traditions. We'll give you a nice drink of water here, Clarence.
Okay, thank you.
And we hope that...
Geez, it is water, too.
Well, certainly it's water. We wouldn't have anything different. And we're glad to have you on the show, and hopefully that we'll be back again in another year, and keep up the good work with that museum.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clarence Mooch Kashner.
And I hope the people will send some money to us to help pay for this parade.
Okay,
the money
good.
that we don't have.
I'm for you. I'm for you, Clarence. Right. That was Mr. Kashner, of course, who's a state mine inspector and who's still very active. And as you have seen, and in describing what he has come up with, that anthracite is still being operated in the area. And he has a full-time job, as was indicated by those slides, so that there are people who are deep mining anthracite, even though there's a lot of strip mining going on, but still, the independent miner is still cooking along and still doing a job and still providing jobs for many people. You're viewing a Coal-A-Thon, the first annual Coal-A-Thon, on the anniversary of the founding of the Anthracite Heritage Museum, and we're happy to have you with us. We hope that you're enjoying the program. Remember, we're having a parade coming up this Saturday on June the 4th at 5 p.m. And we'll have a guest coming in now. And this time, it's a very real pleasure for me to introduce to you a very attractive young woman who serves as the Anthracite Heritage Committee as the secretary. And, well, she and I are going to discuss a little known asset of the Anthracite Heritage Center. It's 10 tapes of last year's bicentennial events, which are preserved at the center's library under the watchful eye of Mr. Schomper, of course, and that's none other than Mrs. Irene Roth. And Irene, glad to have you. And it's a pleasure to have you come on the Coal-A-Thon.
It's nice to be here, Stan, and of course, being a coal miner's daughter, I'm interested in the
You're a
anthracite
coal miner's daughter?
Yep.
Well, I'm
Yep.
a coal miner's son, so I guess we have everything to be proud of those people, right? Our
Right,
parents, right?
right.
Very good. Well, now let me ask you this, Irene. What are some of the videotapes that we have preserved at the center?
Well, Stan, last year being our bicentennial year, we have quite a few nice tapes. One, for instance, is the Polish Day that was taped up at St. Stan's, as you know.
I'm on that tape, and I have
Yes.
never seen that tape.
In your beautiful bicentennial costume.
Yeah, and I've never seen the tape. Can you imagine that?
Well, they have the tape. They taped the dancing, judging of the costumes, tapes of the children parading outside, even with Count Pulaski.
Those kids were super.
Yeah.
Those kids were super.
Well, this type, they have a real nice tape of the Polish Day.
Mm-hmm. And what else now? I mean, we have last year's parade, of course, right?
Yes.
And we didn't get the Ukrainian festival. I don't think we had that. I don't believe we did. I'm not sure. But let me ask you this. We had a lot of fun there, and I'm sure that we are going to preserve more films. Now, tell me, what other types of films are we going to preserve up there? Or do you have in mind, or that the museum has in mind to preserve?
Well, right now, these were history of the town. We took them because of the bicentennial, and it will become history. These tapes will be very interesting to view for our children and their children in years to come. We have tapes, like I said, of the Polish Day, also of the firefighters' party time on Market Street.
Time.
Yes.
Right. I remember that one.
They have tapes of that, and that was quite interesting. They had fun with their equipment, but also got a chance to show some of the real fine firefighting equipment that Shamokin really does have. They also have a tape of the cavalcade of bands that was held out at Shamokin area, and they have a tape of a tour of the Anthracite Heritage Museum.
Well, now, I guess we're very happy to have a local television station like WETV here that cooperates and does a great job in getting these tapes done. I guess, what does it take to do it? Just call them, or what do we have to do to get it done?
That's right, Stan. We do have the cooperation of the TV. Now we need the cooperation of the people. When they're planning these activities and functions in our area, we need the cooperation of the people planning them to see that they do get taped. We're fortunate to have a TV taping station in our town and in the Mount Carmel area, and they're very cooperative, and we can have these tapes, and they can be required. Just tell the station that you want to keep the tape, they'll keep it for you, and they can be purchased just at the cost it costs them to make the tape. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, if we want to preserve it, it's at the Anthracite Museum for anybody who cares to
Yes,
do it at some time.
Right.
Some groups are as a repeat. I have to see that Polish tape. I must see that Polish tape. Now, let me ask you this. Can I borrow it, or can an organization borrow the tape from the museum, or how does that work?
Yes, they have, any organization can borrow the tapes and use them. Of course, you know you have to have the proper equipment to show them. The Anthracite Heritage right now is contemplating buying a projector to show these tapes and slides. Of course, the TV stations have them available.
Well, what are they on? Are they on a 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter? What type of measurement is on there? Or don't you know?
That I don't know, Stan.
Or is it a special equipment? Maybe these fellows will tell us. 3/4 inch video cassette. Now, all of you cassette fans out there will know that, right? 3/4 inch video cassette. Okay. Now, as far as anything else is concerned, do you keep a track of these tapes, Irene? Are you in charge of that department, or how does one go about? Do they contact you, or do they contact the center, or who?
Well, I'm not in charge of that department, no. But if they contact any one of the gentlemen at the center, they'll, on the committee or any one of the officers, they'll take care of them or get the tapes for you, but they're available there.
And you're the tape girl, huh?
No,
and a pretty one
no.
at that? No. I know you run the job as secretary up there, and that's a full-time job with the museum as active as it is, and the center as active as it is. And Irene, we certainly want to thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate you having you here, and keep coming with those tapes and keep preserving them. But remember, I'm going to call you for that Polish tape. I have to get that tape.
Okay.
I haven't seen that as yet, and I'll have to ask these fellows here to do the job. So thank you very much again, Irene. And again, to all our guests, we give a fine glass of water.
Okay, Stan.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've just listened to Mrs. Irene Roth, who's the secretary at the center, the Anthracite Heritage Museum, and who does a great job of keeping track of all of those tapes and keeping track of preserving for posterity some of the events that have occurred in the community and in the area, and just keeping it up to date so that in future years you may be able to stop by and pick up the tape and look at it. I know someday we're going to run that anthracite parade from last year, where we had many, many thousands of people who were in the line of march and who enjoyed themselves immensely, and who were super as far as the parade was concerned, and who'd like to see themselves. I know, for example, members of that Shamokin High School area band 10 years from now take a look at that and say, boy, there I was in 1976 in that high school band parading down Independence Street. That's something to look forward to. And I would say this, that maybe at some of these alumni gatherings, some of these types of presentations could be made. Now, at this time, we have the third musketeer and another young fella who's a retired mine inspector, and he has a room at the Anthracite Heritage Center, and it's none other than our good friend Joe Lonstein. And Joe, welcome to the Coal-A-Thon.
Thank you, Stan.
You're the last man here of the triumvirate, but I'm sure you're glad to have you here.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
We're glad to see you around, Joe. Now, I know that we've had slide presentations and we've gone through the museum, but there are some things I think that you, Joe, I can recall one thing that I was always impressed with you at the museum. I know you spend a lot of time up there, but the thing that impressed me one day when I was in the museum on a tour, and I was up there for about an hour or so, I remember two young men coming in to you. And the one young fellow was he was only about 12 or 13 years old, and he was very inquisitive regarding mine accidents and regarding the oxygen in the blood. You recall that?
Yes.
You recall that, young man?
Yes.
he was a super guy, and the thing that impressed me was that you took the time, you had the patience to stay with that young man and explain to him just how the blood, the white corpuscles and the red corpuscles operate with the lack of oxygen, how carbon monoxide affects it, and it was super. And for that alone, I mean, what impressed me was that the young people of the community were interested in that type of thing, and I wish you'd comment on that. I'm sure you had other incidences that have happened.
What interested me about boys like that, for instance, just the other day, I had a young fellow up there, about 12 years old, and he looked at the pictures I have on my board, and he says, "Is this how coal was formed?" I says, "Yes." I says, the seas were out here, and this was a big flat in here, and we had tremendous growth of fern and cattails mostly. And as the one plant would grow on top of the other, at that time in history, 250 or 300 million years ago, there wasn't any oxygen on this planet, and plants thrived on the carbon dioxide in the air. Hence, they grew up, the plants grew, and then another plant would grow on top of it, and finally it would settle down, and then the seeds would wash in sediment. Then later on came the volcanic areas. Now, at the time during the volcanic areas, this whole area, down into Kentucky, Mississippi, any place coal was found, was a vast forest. And as the plants grew and died and was covered over, and all this was laid out, the volcanic action started along in our area. And that's where we differ from the bituminous area, because our coal is hard, and our coal was formed into anthracite coal because it was pressed up by volcanic action and heat. So that's why anthracite coal is much harder than bituminous coal, and why we only have it in this area, because it was the volcanic action in here.
Just in this one spot.
460,
no other place in the world, Joe, right?
460 square miles. Yes, I believe Arnold Harvey told me that he has found some in Washington and some in one or two other places, and we believe that there is pretty big deposits in China and in Russia. But in the United States, the only place it's found in any quantity is here in the anthracite field.
Well, you know, we've had some serious things going on, Joe, and I know you're interested in the center, and I know we have a lot of activity, but you've been around a long time, and I'm sure that you have many stories to tell. Now, let me ask you this. What, in your mind, was one of the most an old mining story? I mean, what one stands out in your mind most of all? Now, I know I'm going to open up a box for you. But,
oh, well, there's several. You see, I was fortunate to be born in a part of the, and grow up in a part of our area that few people remember. I was born in 1900. And the influx of immigrants from the old country coming in here in, from 1905 until 1920 was tremendous. And I'll never forget going up here to the Reading station or over to the Pennsylvania station and seeing those fellas come in fresh off the boat. Now, they were handled just like cattle. I mean by that, they were met in New York at the dock,
Put on a flat car probably.
No,
just a cattle car.
no, they gave him a coach.
They gave him a coach.
Yeah. But they put a tag on him.
Yeah.
John Katanchik, or who
might have
be
been, yeah.
in care of
So-and-so.
John Supzik or
Yeah, I
somebody.
see.
So he got on the train and he waited in that waiting room at that station till someone came in and picked him up and took him on out. Well then, it was a place to find living quarters, and many of our houses in this area were boarding houses. I mean, the Polish fellow would look for somebody of Polish extraction so he could talk to that Polish man. The Dutch to a Dutchman, the Irish to an Irishman. And I don't mind telling you that I have heard of bedrooms. The bed in the bedroom would work 3 shifts.
Oh, you mean the bed would work 3 shifts?
The bed, 2 men would sleep in it and get up and go to work, and the fellas coming off the shift previous to them would crawl in, and when it was time for them to get up, then 2 more fellas would come in. So you weren't allowed to sleep more than 8 hours.
You had to just
You had to get out away from the
You had to get a bed. Never had, you had to do that, huh?
Yeah.
How long ago was that, Joe?
Oh, 1905, 1910.
1910.
Yeah, 1915. You know, at one time...
How much now, when you talk about 1905 or 1910, now, when this fella came here from across, and they loaded him out of New York and brought him in to say, and I'm responsible for him, how long did I have to keep him?
Oh, you weren't made in any way responsible. You just sponsored him to get a passage over here, and then you picked him up and seen that he got a boarding house. After that, he was on his own.
In other words, after that, he was on his own. You weren't responsible for him in any way at all until he, I mean, in other words, when he got here, he said, good luck, and
that's right.
You found a place to stay, and that was it.
Here's a place to stay, and this is
the job, and that was it.
These are yeah, they got a job right away. There was no trouble getting work in those days. And you can readily see why the Polish would look for
Polish.
For instance, here's how they migrated or where they settled when they come to this country for the most part. Now, the Polish went to Springfield. The Lithuanians went to Washington. The Italians went out in the 5th Ward. The Austrians to the West End. The English on Silver Hill, and the Irish up on Scotch Hill.
And they all were separated, huh?
That's right.
How did the Irish get on Scotch Hill?
Well, I don't know, but that's where they. I guess some Scotchmen took pity on them.
Took pity on them, and that was it, huh? That was it.
But there's a lot of stories concerning. I think one of the most interesting. You see, those fellows that come from this country to this country rather may have left their parents, their father, their mother, their wife even, and their children, and came to this country and settled here. So, one thing they never did though, they never left their humor there. They brought that humor.
Everybody
right
had their own little dry humor, and
that's
it was,
right. I'll tell you a story now, and I'm not reflecting any.
No ethnic group.
No,
I understand that.
No ethnic group.
Sure.
But I worked at the Glenburn Colliery for a long time, and the fellas gone into work at night would wait outside the lamp room, or in a waiting room, and they'd tell stories. It was coming close to the fishing season, and I called this fella John. John was listening to all the other fellas telling lies about being able to be out and catch trout, you know. Oh, they caught this trout and this many trout. So John come over to me and he says, Joe, he says, you hear that fella, he says, talk how many trout he's catch. I says, yeah. He says, I tell you something, I'm fisher, I go fish. I fished down for Middle Creek Dam one time. Well, I fish for Middle Creek Dam, I'm catching nothing. I'm throw a trout line out at night. That's next morning I pull it in trout line. That trout line is heavy. I'm wondering what's on, big fish. I'm pulling it. What you think on that trot line, Joe? I don't know, John. What is it? He says, slot machine. What? A slot machine on the fishing line? Yeah. He says, he's muddy like nobody's business. He says, I'm washing off. I'm seeing he's 5-cent machine. I'm reach for pocket. I'm have 5 cents. I'm gonna see what I catching. I put it, 5 cents that slot machine, I pull it that handle. What you think, Joe? I'm catching that jackpot. What did you catch, John? What was on that jackpot? He says, 5 trouts. Oh, there's lots of stories concerning.
I know that. Joe,
Yeah.
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of humor in mining. But there's been also a lot of tragedy.
Well,
And let me say this. I mean, which accident? I know you've seen much in your lifetime. Which one in your mind stands out as one of the most tragic in the area?
oh, I don't
Probably many of them.
When you would judge that, if I were to do that, I would bring in something concerning someone that was close
to me, right?
And
You don't want to do that.
I'll tell you one thing though,
What?
Stan, that I do today up at the museum. You come in the museum, you notice there's a mannequin there
Yeah,
dressed
right.
in miner's clothes.
Right.
So I had that mannequin in my cellar for a couple of years with my mini museum until I moved all my stuff up to the big
You
museum.
get the museum.
And I moved up the mannequin along with it. And many people were scared with that mannequin. So I used to tell the young people, I'd say, now, this fella I worked with when I was young. When I was about 20 years old, he and I worked together. And I said, I was a mule driver, and they wanted this boy to take my job, and I warned him against it. But finally, he took it. I said, he took the job, and I had another job at a different part of mine, and at 9 o'clock they come in and told me that Bill Martin was killed.
No kidding.
So I says, I knew the Camptons, so I talked to the Camptons. I says, don't bury that fella. I says, save him and stuff him and give him to me, and I'll keep him. So I says, that's my buddy. When you look at him, he's my buddy when I was 20 years old. So I had a lot of fun in that. I'll never forget, I think you're familiar with the way they detonate explosives in the mine. All right, I got in on an inspection one time, and I met a fellow. He was all powder marked and coal marks in face and hands. And I says, what the heck's happened to you? Well, he says, I'll tell you, Joe. He says, the mine that I worked at, he says, when we got the first electric detonators and dynamite, we were the first people to get them. One thing that the boss says to me, now make sure when you connect your firing wire to that detonator that you don't have them touching, because they'll short and the exploder won't go off, the dynamite won't go off. So he says, we tamped a hole, and we went down to the head and to fire the shot, my buddy and I, and it wouldn't go. So I says to my buddy, I says, wait, I'll go up and see. I remembered what the boss said. The boss said, make sure it's not touching. So I said, he said, I went up, and sure enough, the wires was touching. So I pulled them apart. And I hollered down to my buddy, now try it. And he did. So he set the shut off in me.
That's the way it goes with some of these fellows. Yeah, that's
yeah,
funny, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you know, Joe, in your travels and in your inspection setups, I mean, I guess the humor were these fellas, you know, of all different groups. Did they work as groups in the mines,
Yeah.
or did they? In other words, did they work with each other?
Two, usually a crew in a mine, a breast party or usually was composed of two men. Sometimes in gangways and opening new places, they'd have three, but as a rule, it was two men working together.
No, but I remember years ago, the ethnic backgrounds. I mean, and the frictions between. In other words, if I was Polish, and if I were Polish and I was going to date the Irish girl down in the Irish section, I was having a problem getting over there. And the same thing was true for that Irishman coming into the Polish section. Now, how did that affect some of the stuff going on in the mines, Joe?
Well, it seems that men got along all right after they learned to understand each other. But as a general rule, a Polish fellow worked with a Polish man and an Italian with an Italian.
Right.
Until he mastered the language just a little bit. Then it wasn't too bad. Then you could pair them up pretty well. But as you say about the fellow going up to Springfield, all right, steam push made him out of the bottom of the hill.
Right.
And I remember a friend of mine, he had a nice white suit on.
Yeah.
So he come down after taking the girl home, and these boys met him, and he says, who are you? Well, he told him who he was. Who'd you take home? He told him who he took home. Well, he says, they said, we don't want you up here anymore. Now, here, this nice little creek running down here, you walk in it all the way down to the silk mill. So he walked in
With the nice white
in
suit.
the Sulphur Creek all the way down. But Farmer Culp, Farmer Culp solved the problem.
How did he do that?
The Shamokin and Edgewood Railway Company,
Oh, I see.
they had Edgewood Park. So it was 5 cents for your car fare. So you could take your girl for a dime. You could take your girl, you and the girl go out to Edgewood Park, and there was dancing every night. And you could dance. The dancing didn't cost you anything. The pavilion was free. You had 20 cents. You and your girl went down and got a 10-cent plate of ice cream.
You got a good plate, too, for a dime.
Oh, yeah, you got it pretty good.
Yeah,
Then
good
you rode
plate.
home in the streetcar again. So for 40 cents a night, you could take your girl out.
Let me ask you this, Joe. Now, in those days, when these fellas came in, and in the old, now we speak of them as old days, but I'm talking about the early 1900s. What was the weekly wage normally for, what were the hours that these fellas put in?
Oh, when I started to work around the mine.
Yeah, what did you make when you started to work around the mine?
$10.52 a week.
For how many hours, Joe?
For 60. No, not 60. About 48.
About 48 hours.
48 hours.
And that's what you made, $10.52 a week.
Then we got a raise too, right after that, and that was the first raise of any amount that anybody ever got.
Yeah, well,
in the
now,
anthracite
as that progressed, in the anthracite field, what was, today, for example, I guess, what do they usually average today?
Oh, I don't know.
You have no idea. But what did they average at the time that you retired, Joe? Were they making $50 a day?
No. That was 1970. No, I think the anthracite miner now, I'm not sure, but I don't think he gets much over $40 a day.
I'm just wondering, maybe you have the story or not. I might be putting you on the spot. But, with all of these fellas, with their tough, their tough time to get used to the language,
Yeah.
and the difficulty they had in communicating with people. Now, they had the contract miner, right?
Yeah.
Did they have him back there in those days?
Yeah.
Now, how did that guy be able to negotiate for himself at that time, or was there a set number of rules in those days?
Well, the companies made their own rate sheets. So much for doing this and so much for doing something else and so on. But when you become a miner, you see, you have to know something about mining. After the law of 1892, the anthracite mine law. From that time on, a young fellow going into the mines had to serve an apprenticeship.
He had to meet requirements then, right up the line.
That's right. Before he could apply for a certificate as to become a miner.
Now, when he became a miner, I mean, he was able to contract for himself then, or was he, or did he have to work with a gang or whatever?
By that
Or a
time,
crew?
the United Mine Workers of America, by the time I started to work, the United Mine Workers of America would negotiate the contracts.
I see.
And it was standard.
It was standard
throughout
for
the
everybody
mine.
then. In other words, the union then took over the
Yeah.
negotiation for the boys.
Yeah. But as a driver
Of course,
boy,
that's a chapter in the industry itself, by itself.
that's right. In the 1920s, I remember driving a mule for 5 1/4 a day, 8 hours. And previous to that, I worked with some older miners, and they told me that at one time, if a man made $2 a day in the mines, when he'd walk down the street, the average people would tip their hats
Tip
to
your
him
hat for him.
because he was a high-priced man.
Yeah,
He was the brightest man. He was able to do a lot of things other than mining.
I see.
Carpenter work, for instance, in the mines to keep air currents in their
Yeah, well, I see.
proper way, proper directions.
Joe, to change the subject a little bit, on the museum, I notice you have a wealth of tools there, and I've asked each of the previous, I've asked Bob and I've asked Mooch, how did you acquire all of this equipment? What motivated you to preserve all of that? That's the thing.
I don't know. I didn't have too much interest before, maybe 1965. But 1965, I thought, well, now, Joe, you're going to retire in a short time. What are you going to do with your time? So I might as well gather all the memorabilia that I can. So I began to gather it, and I stored it, and when I retired in 1970, my wife and I built up our cellar, our basement, and we paneled it, put a good ceiling in, and even put wall-to-wall carpet in. And then I displayed all my tools. I have tools up there that my grandfather used tools much like a rake. You know, in the early days when anthracite was sold on the market, there was no sale for small coal. Then why take it out of the mine? So they'd have a rake, and of course we were near the surface on the mining then, and it was comparatively flat. And the miner or his labor would take this and he'd rake the coal. Now those tines were 4 or 5 inches apart, and whatever laid there, laid there. They only wanted the lumps, because they only burned the coal in the house then in little grates set into the wall, like a fireplace. You see, heating stoves and cook stoves were not made then yet.
Not made then, huh?
No, they didn't have them.
That's great. Well, Joe, I want to thank you for stopping by.
You're welcome.
And it's great having you on the Coal-A-Thon, and God bless you and good luck to you. But wait a minute.
I was happy to
Where's
be
your
here.
drink? You have to get your drink. I mean, that's one thing we do here. And it was Mr. Joe Lonstein, a retired mine inspector, of course, one of the movers of the Anthracite Heritage Museum, and we were happy to have him here. And it's just a great dedication that these three men have regarding the anthracite area and the museum itself. So this Coal-A-Thon is coming your way. We're happy to have you view it. It's a history of the coal industry as we have seen it so far. It's also celebrating the first anniversary of the opening of the Anthracite Heritage Museum. And we'd also like to remind you that coming up on Saturday, this coming Saturday, June the 4th, we'll have the Anthracite Heritage Parade, and that'll begin at 5 o'clock. And back with us for another run at it are the two people we started our show with, Kim Schaefer, who's the general chairman of the Anthracite Parade Committee, and Kitty Klobasco. And back again, Kitty and Kim, nice having you back.
Nice being back.
That's nice being back, huh? Did you get any more information on the parade, Kim, or how are things going?
Things are going quite well. I think we're about ready.
You're about ready?
Some running around to do tomorrow night, tomorrow afternoon, Saturday morning.
I see.
But I think we're set. Stan, I'd like to make an announcement of the award winners from the drawing which was held last night. The winner of the CB set was Janie Thomas from Hillside Avenue. $75 was Charlie Williams from West Arch Street. $50 was Shirley Bailey, and she lives on Westwood Street. And the $25 winner was John Ostick from Pulaski Avenue.
So those are the winners now of your drawing, huh? Now, on the contributions, you're going to have people going through the parade route, Kim, right? Saturday afternoon to pick up whatever donations people wish to give, correct?
Yes, Stan, we have two clubs from Shamokin High School, the Gal Club and the Key Club. Or, I'm sorry, they're not from Shamokin, they're from Our Lady of Lourdes High School. And from Shamokin High School, we'll have members of the PEP Club, of course assisted by the members of Kiwanis Club with the solicitation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would like to mention that our solicitors will be wearing a styrofoam type straw hat.
So they're identified.
They will be identified by these hats. They'll also have the containers, and they'll have the programs or parade programs which will have the line of march in them.
I see. Now, of the outfits that are coming in now, would you just repeat for the late viewers, people who may not have joined us earlier, would you repeat and find out just exactly the number of units that we're going to have? I mean, just give us a breakdown of the parade for this coming Saturday.
Stan, we're set up into 3 divisions, and we total, at this point, approximately 65 units. I'm saying at this point, I had a cancellation this morning, but at the same time, I had an addition this afternoon.
Balanced off.
So it balanced off, and we really won't know totally until parade day.
I see. Now, how many musical units are in that?
We have 17 musical units from as far away as I think I mentioned before, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Ephrata High School, and so on.
And Kitty, getting back to you for just a minute, we have the Queen and her court, right, with the float. Do we have any other floats coming in?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of. It's just strictly a musical setup, huh?
Yes, Stan, we do have a
Do we?
few floats. The Lions Club
I see.
will have a float in,
Uh-huh.
and a offshoot from the Bicentennial last year is the 5th Ward Bicentennial group float. We have a float from the United States Navy, and I believe that's the George Washington float, isn't it, Kitty?
Right, the George Washington.
We also expect to have a float from the Locust Gap Centennial group.
Hey, that's right. They have one coming up. When is that? The end of June, I guess, or the end of July?
I believe it's the end of June.
I'm not
July.
sure.
July.
July.
It's the end of July?
July.
Yeah, I know they have one. Now, I noticed that we have, I noticed that they just handed me that you're going to have some slides to be shown here right now. I'm just wondering what type of slides they are, so I'm going to leave Kitty, and Kitty, explain them. What are they?
Well, they are slides of posters that the girls and boys from Our Lady of Lourdes art class made for us, more or less to give us a little advertisement on this parade. And we have them in different stores in town, advertising the parade. And more or less, we gave awards to, say, the 3 top winners of these posters and to make them feel like they did something for their community, and more or less, well, could I say, it's just more or less an advertisement.
An advertising. All right. If they're ready in the control room, why don't the two of you, Kimber, you and Kitty, explain these posters and give credit to those people that
Right. I
deserve
want
it,
to
right?
give special thanks to Sister Amadine, who cooperated with me so much in making these posters and getting these students out in a very little time they had to make them, and making them so nice that we had to give these awards. And I guess, what else could I say? They just were beautiful posters, and I thank Sister Amadine again and the students for making them. Oh, and this here Anthracite Heritage picture, which is on the TV right now, is a first place award, and it was made by Kathy Borak from Marin Heights. And this is the second award. Oh, we didn't have enough time. And this is the third award.
When were these done, Kitty, at the time? I mean, how were they operated?
Well, they had a very short time to do it in, only 8 days.
And Sister Amadine was in charge of this,
Right. She was in charge of it. She's the artman out at
I
Our
know
Lady of Lords.
Sister Amadine, yes.
And she only had 8 days to do it in, and there were 20 posters made, and I think they did a beautiful job
Well, that's great. There you
on
are.
stressing our Anthracite Heritage Memorial Parade.
And that's June 4th, 5 p.m.
5 p.m. June 4th.
By the way, what's the parade route while we're watching these? Kim, what's the parade route? We're starting where, on Arch Street?
The parade forms on West Arch Street and West Lynn Street, and I'd like to remind those local people who are participating to drive out West Walnut Street. Do not come on to Arch or Lynn Street. You'll go straight out Walnut Street and be positioned from there. The parade will move on Arch to 2nd, south on 2nd to Spruce, east
Then-
on Spruce to Market,
And then,
north on Market to
Lincoln.
Lincoln, east on Lincoln to Lincoln and Spursheim to Shamokin, north on Shamokin Street to Independence, and west on Independence to the Wise parking lot where it will break up. The judges' stand will be located at Independence and 9th Street.
and there we're still looking at those posters that were made by the students at Lourdes High School. A lot of different ideas, but still the same Anthracite Heritage Memorial Parade. They're going into the mine there, now they're coming out of the mine there, right? See that? They're
That's right.
they're going to the parade right there, right now. Well, I guess that's about it for today. Kitty and Kim, we'd like to give a special thank you to WETV for this particular Coal-A-Thon, and we're very happy that they've allowed us to come in here and show you a part of the Anthracite Heritage Museum, give you a view of the area as independent mining is concerned, as anthracite mining is concerned. We also offered you some comments on the operation of our Chamber of Commerce, what they're trying to do to revive the anthracite industry. And our special thanks to Don Rosini, who was kind enough to stop in and explain what anthracite is doing, and also to my two good friends here, Kim Schaefer and Kitty Klobasco, for the parade. as well as to those three musketeers out there, Harold Bob Schomper and Clarence Mooch Kashner and Joe Lonstein. Without them, of course, the museum wouldn't be anything. So good luck, and Kimber, have a lot of fun, all right?
Thank you, Stan. Before we go, I'd be remiss, really, in saying, you know, in expressing our thanks to the sponsors, to the Anthracite Heritage Committee, to WETV and their crew, and especially to you, Stan, for the fine, fine job. Hey,
No problem.
it's hot back here,
Yeah,
and
the
how
lights-
you were here for 3 hours, I don't know.
The lights are pretty warm.
And one guy sitting out
Yeah.
there that
Put it all
put
together.
it all together
Right.
in a very short period of time, and that's Dick Morgan. I'd like to say thanks to Dick and extend my heartfelt appreciation, and I'm sure the appreciation of everyone that was here, participated, and is going to benefit from the show this evening.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about it for our first Coal-A-Thon. We've given you an insight. Come on, join us this Saturday with the parade, and come up to the museum and join us. And as we said, we're still open for contributions for the parade. If you care to mail in a contribution, just mail it to the Anthracite Parade Committee, care of Shamokin City Hall, and I'm sure they'll get it. Or give it to any one of the committee members. I'm sure the parade committee will get it. And again, they'll be out soliciting the route, parade day. They'll have their straw hats on. So we'll make this a great day for Shamokin and the Shamokin area. And so without any further ado, this is Stan Binkowski saying so long for the first Coal-A-Thon, and we'll see you Saturday at the parade. Good night, everybody.
This is WETV Cablevision 10 ending another day of telecasting for viewers of the